So, Suzanne Schilling, welcome. We're
Well,
glad
thank you.
we have on occasion sent pastors to your institution for various and sundry reasons. So we have some connection with you already.
Okay.
So tell us about yourself. Tell us about your work.
So I'm actually the new executive director of the Davidson Clergy Center. I started January 1st. I kind of got introduced to it in 2018 because by trade, I'm a leadership and life coach that specializes in clergy, as well as veterans who are transitioning from homelessness to self-sufficiency. So I had heard of the Davidson Clergy Center because I am a clergy spouse. Now, granted, is not part of the PCUSA community, but with that kissing cousin denomination known as Methodism. So I work a lot within the Methodist arena, especially in North Carolina. As a coach, I also serve on various boards, such as things as the Episcopacy and the what we call decom and things like that. So I'm pretty familiar with all things clergy, especially in the Methodist world. I've realized that PCUSA and Methodism are structurally very similar. We just use different words. So as long as I know my lingo, I'm usually pretty caught up on what's going on. But yeah, because I've been coaching with the Davidson Clergy Center for like 5+ years, when Reverend Gordon Jacobs or George Jacobs, a PCUSA minister, decided to retire from the business along with his spouse Gordon, they asked me to step in. And so yeah, Gordon and George started this program about 20 years ago, seeing the need for clergy to find a place to kind of come and assess, reassess, and what they want to do about it. With your permission, I'd kind of like to give you a feel for what we do, unless that's information that you already know. Okay, thumbs
Not
up.
everyone is deeply familiar with your work, so go right ahead.
Well, thank you. So, I want to start off that I'm in close contact with Duke Divinity School, and they just released a report back in May, which pretty much said everything that we already know. Clergy are juggling multiple responsibilities, including their own families. The vocation's already demanding. In some churches that I actually go to, the pastor's everything from the bathroom scrubber to the landscaper to the spiritual leader to the social worker to the counselor. And so this clergy health initiative project that Duke put out this past year, it just kind of put a giant exclamation point from that. And so what the Davidson Clergy Center does is we work with clergy persons that are experiencing both present and ongoing emotional, congregational, as well as personal stress, all the uncertainties of the ministerial call. And we do this by having clergy spend 4 days with us on site to where they can focus on their own self-care with their own personal and professional resilience. So what we do is we provide physical training, spiritual training, small group, individual counseling, life coach. And it's a very holistic approach. It's truly the mind, body, and the spirit. And so our focus here is to really help the fatigued, the depleted clergy find healthy ways to manage the stresses that encompasses their ministry settings. So several times per month, we invite clergy to participate in the program, or they find out about us and I fit them right on in. And when they're here, they participate in abundance of one-on-one time with our faculty to go as in-depth as they are willing, whether it be personal or professional. Usually it's both. Additionally, they have group sessions that allow for reflection and support from others within their cohort, whether it's guided spiritual practices, discussions on resilience, even participating in an offsite equine experience. So we bring a lot of different help modalities in. So I know there are wonderful programs out there for clergy. So let me tell you why I think we're a little bit different. One, we have very small cohorts. So on average, we're going to have two to four clergy on any given week. Honestly, the sweet spot is probably 3, but we are not opposed to taking on a single clergy person in instances where we feel it is warranted. So there have been times a solo pastor, meaning they are by themselves, has come to spend the week with us. Also, at times, I will allow for a maximum of 4 to show up in those instances where minister is saying, please just let me come now rather than later. So what this means is that the intimacy of the group, it really allows, hopefully, for trust to be built within that cohort to form a bond in most cases, which I've witnessed being taken beyond their time with us. I often witness, folks exchanging contact information because they have built this camaraderie. And here's the thing. Part of my air traffic controlling that I do here is I make sure that clergy from the same presbytery are not showing up at the same time unless they're specifically requesting it. So these folks are meeting clergy from multiple denominations that are not necessarily even in their same state. So whether it's PCUSA, Methodism, Cooperative Baptist, Lutheran, or Episcopalian, they're so it's an ecumenical project, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And something else that we might do a little bit differently, and I kind of referred to it before, is we do take that whole mind, body, and yes, I mean physical body, as well as the spirit concept to heart. So we approach the individual at a very holistic level, because in our humble opinion, based on the faculty that we have, we are of one accord when we say, when one of these is out of kilter, it affects the others. I like to kind of bring up during orientation on the first day that folks are here, is that a lot of us think we know how to compartmentalize really well. And there are some masters at it. But for the vast majority, folks like to think of themselves as waffles, right? Where they can kind of pour that syrup in that particular area and it doesn't dribble over, when in fact, human nature, data has shown we're more like pancakes. When our syrup pours, it goes everywhere. So when our professional life is affected, our social life is affected, our relational life is affected in some way. So again, there's that holistic approach. Because if we approach the spirit and not the body, and the body and not the mind, we just don't feel it is as effective. So, if someone says, give me a 15-second spiel, elevator speech, I tell them to think of us as triage. We do not have a magic wand. It's only 4 days, right? So in 4 days, all is not right with the world, so to speak. What we do provide is a safe starting space for folks who come to begin the journey toward healing and wholeness, or whatever that clergy person is looking for. Basically, this is the place for a person to understand where they are right now, possibly how they got there, and what, if anything, they want to do about it. Because on that last day, they actually meet with one of our coaches so that they can begin to design goals for themselves. And then after they leave, they meet with that coach 2 more times, just so we can we don't want to leave them high and dry. We don't want to drop them like they're hot. We want to keep them going toward whatever goal or goals that they set. So again, we have coaching. The really cool thing about our faculty is we probably have 20 to 25 that come in from all areas around the Davidson area. They are either clergy right now who are behind the pulpit, but they see this as a ministerial response outside the 4 walls of the church, helping other clergy. We have clergy who are what I would call extension ministry. So they're not behind the pulpit, but they're doing something as clergy, such as in a counseling or spiritual direction sense. So we've got clergy who are retired as well, and they're coming back and saying, I want to help. And then we have laity. We do have a handful of ladies, such as myself. I am not behind the pulpit. I am not ordained, but I am very much willing to look behind the green curtain, so to speak, because I'm married to an elder in full connection in the Methodist denomination. So I have very willingly said, let me see what's behind the curtain. And that's what's kind of drawn me to focus probably 80% of my time with clergy. Now, the really cool thing is that your Board of Pensions, they really understand the need for ministers to participate in some kind of respite and vocational support to kind of foster renewal and wholeness. And as such, they are actually providing $5,000, which more than covers our tuition and fees, their travel, their accommodations, their room and board, their meals. I've had folks come as far as California And no one has said to me yet that $5,000 doesn't cut it. So we are a space. We don't provide the room and board. We don't feed you. We ask you to go and look at that for yourself. That $5,000 does cover it all. Something else that might be a little bit different about us is our days start at 8 and they end no later than 5. And we don't have them doing bucket loads of homework to get prepared for the next day, because we realize we are really diving in deep with them. It's pretty intense emotionally. And so we want to give them that respite at night to do whatever they want, whether it's go out to eat together as a group, just hang out and binge on Netflix at night, whatever is going to help them recover from the day and get back in the game the next day. So, again, the Board of Pensions were pre-approved, which means it's pretty easy for folks to apply. They just go on the Board of Pensions website, look at their clergy wellness program, and you will actually see Davidson Clergy Center or Davidson Center on there, and that the application process is right there. I don't think it takes more than 10 minutes. I don't know that I've been told it takes no more than 2 weeks to get approved, because again, we're pre-approved. The only requirement for eligibility as far as the clergy person is that they have to be a minister enrolled in pastor's participation or minister's choice, and their effective salary cannot exceed $80,000, but that excludes the man's value. So again, they're going to apply. They're going to get a pretty fast response on approval, and the board is actually going to send them the $5,000 to whatever account they say. So the money's waiting for them to pay for the tuition and take up any fees that they may need as far as gas or air or whatever. So in my mind, PCUSA ministers have a really unprecedented opportunity here. They really do. And so I just want to encourage you guys to share it however you can, whether it's newsletter, emails, presbytery meetings, individual referrals, however you think is best. And know this, Larry's actually got my contact information, but I welcome anybody to call or email me directly if they have any questions, because I'm the air traffic controller. I'm everything from the administrative assistant. I too scrub the toilets, and I also manage the center. So I'm the first form of contact, and it gives me a chance to explain, understand what's going on for them, so that we can get that ball rolling. So I'm going to breathe right now, take a pause, and see what, if any, questions I can answer. Y'all gonna be that easy on me. There we go.
I'll jump in. I'm never short on questions. So you mentioned mentoring and coaching. Do you use a particular model or?
We don't mentor.
Okay.
And the coaching, if there is such a model, we are all accredited by the International Coaching Federation.
Okay.
Which that's like our legislative body. Yeah.
Okay.
So
thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, you
In fact,
mentioned
that's a
this.
very good.
I apologize. How long have you
No,
been
no.
doing this? How long have you been doing this, did you say?
With the Davidson Clergy Center?
Yeah.
Yeah, I took over as executive director on January 1st, so I'm about 9 months old here. Prior to that, George and Gordon were running the whole shebang. They were partnering up. I basically took over both their jobs and began to do this. So yeah, I'm 9 months into it. Feel like I have a pretty good feel and role for it. The only thing I'm kind of anxious about is taxes, but that's not your worry, that's mine.
And about how many clergy have gone through in your 9 months?
In my 9 months, I would say 45. That's off the top, because we don't meet every week.
Sure.
It's like twice a month because of the size that we want to keep it. Now, that being said, Scott, I would like to see us expand. And so one of my marching orders for me personally, this is my own personal goal, is over the next 3 to 5 years, is to see if we can get to that. Let's do this 4 days, 4 weeks a month with breaks, around Christmas and things like that. That's going to be a slow roll. That is going to be a slow roll.
Suzanne, I think our experience with Davidson has been centered around clergy who have experienced some kind of shock or a disruption in their ministry, and they need to take a step back and reassess, reevaluate. So can you speak to how Davidson approaches that kind of,
So, yeah, we have folks that have been traumatized by their calling, so to speak. Something has happened, unexpected, and all of a sudden they're in this vortex spiral down. And they're actually trying to reassess, what do I do next? We have those who have, just recently I spoke with several who are transitioning to retirement, and they're having a hard time defining who they are once they're not behind a pulpit. So we're working with them through that transition piece. I'm also getting ready to have a young clergy person come who is taking their very first call out of Princeton. And the presbyter knows they are going to a very challenging church. So they've asked us to step in and kind of help fortify the foundation for this individual so that when they walk in there, they will understand their own gifts and graces, what they have to bring to the table, and things like that. So we handled a depth and breadth of situations, whether it's trauma, whether it's stress due to health or clergy demands, transitions that can be considered lovely but don't feel so lovely right now. It is an all-encompassing kind of program. But for the most people, folks are feeling that stress and that tension for some reason. And I've had multiple people come back multiple times. Let's say they came 10 years ago during an event, and they recognize, oh, I'm getting ready to lose all the boundaries that I set up for myself. And so they will actually come back, and they'll go through the exact same program. Granted, maybe they'll be speaking with different people, but the idea is the same. They're going to be spending one-on-one time group. And so they're very familiar with this, and this feels very comfortable for them because they realize, man, it got me to where I am now. Now, I will tell you, Larry, we have no opinion whatsoever as faculty when someone is deciding whether to stay in a calling or not. We are simply walking with them and giving them the opportunity to see all of their options. Because me as a coach, I want folks, when they're in that state of stress, it's so hard to see all the options. So as a coach, what I personally try to do is try and widen that gaze so it doesn't seem so black and white, so that they can recognize that there are multiple options. And so that's what we do is here. We don't have any skin in the game as far as what their decision is, but we're going to walk with them as they make the decision.
What about outcomes? How, other than participants saying, oh, this was great and wonderful, what other kind of outcomes, or how do you measure success?
Well, there are two things that I use right now, because again, we're HIPAA compliant. So there's nothing going out as far as who's doing what. It's basically based on some hard data that I feel comfortable grabbing. So it's actually about 93% of the clergy that come through, they actually stick with the coaching for a little while longer. It may be, because part of that 2 sessions afterwards is already paid for in the tuition, right? So they have the option, and it's a private relationship between them and their coach to continue on. And 86% of the folks that came to us saying, I don't know if I'm going to stay, have decided to stay.
Okay.
So those are the 2 statistics that I feel comfortable sharing, because it's very anonymous and it's actual hard data. So, I actually send surveys out 3 months after they've left to see how they're doing. Most are continuing to work in those, a vast majority are continuing to work into those healthier situations. I haven't gotten to the point where I follow up a year for that, but just to touch base with them a little bit afterwards.
Thank you.
How helpful was that, Bonnie?
Right there. And I am asking these questions just because I'm somewhat familiar in the field of education with what you're talking about. So that those your responses to my couple of questions just are very grounded in my experiences in a different field. But that's just what good coaching, whether it's one-to-one or in small group, speaks to, especially if you're using, ICF. So yeah.
In fact, all of our staff are certified in their particular professions. We take that very seriously.
Good.
Especially with coaching, since you're familiar with it, because coaching can be the Wild West.
Oh, yeah. Mentoring too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be the Wild West. So I require, including myself, certification through the ICF because, and as I tell the clergy, if I'm crossing a boundary, you've got a place to go. You have now. I ask that you speak with me first because it may have been unintentional, but you've got a place to go, and I'm happy to say no one's ever done it. But yeah, there is a bit of safety and accountability in that for them.
Yeah, and just for ICF, for people, it's an international, highly credentialed and not easily attained credentialing to get, and a lot of clinical work in it. So I'm so glad to hear that that's the basis of your work. Thanks.
But
Suzanne, you touched on an issue a little bit ago that I think is just crucially important, and that's how a pastor sets proper boundaries in their ministry.
I don't mean to laugh, but I see them not doing it at all. Just saying.
Yeah, that therein lies the problem. What is it Stanley Hauerwas said? That pastors have become a quivering mass of availability. So
I always like to joke they're like specialized neurosurgeons that are world renowned, that they're flying on the jet to Geneva overnight. So they're in this job of 365, 7 days a week, but with much lower pay.
yeah,
Just much lower pay.
I guess I have counsel with pastors who are crashing and burning because they couldn't set proper boundaries.
Yeah,
For whatever.
it's interesting. It's interesting. What I'm working with an individual that's part of the faculty here with creating like 3-hour curriculum on healthy boundaries. And again, this is in the very beginning stages. Again, I'm only 9 months into this, but we're thinking we would love for it to be live. Zoom is wonderful, but when you're talking about stuff like this, I really believe in person. But we're thinking also of offering live webinar. So, she and I are on live with folks and doing like a three-hour presentation, so to speak. And this came about talking to another presbyter who is not particularly happy with what the clergy are having to participate in regarding healthy boundaries. And so they came to me saying, is there something you can do for us? So we're working on that right now. And they've volunteered to be our beta site, and assuming there's still a go. This is something that I think could be very healthy. I don't know if it's a requirement for clergy in PCUSA to undergo healthy boundaries every couple of years or not. But I'd like to take a stab at it because I think we've got some pretty fabulous faculty that could really be on point with folks, and the information would be new. We don't deal in stale data. I really don't appreciate click on this and watch it every 3 years and it's old. This would be actually live, up-to-date data. And the one thing that we pride ourselves, Bonnie, to your point, especially in things like that, is the data. We look at the current science when recreating the new curriculum. So this is a dream that is starting to take shape. But yeah, because we're recognizing that a clergy person or any person who has a heart to serve sets a boundary, but it doesn't take much for someone to walk right over it. It just doesn't take much. But that's because, most clergy, they have the servant's heart. So that's kind of what they do until they can't do it anymore.
Yeah, until they break.
And we'd like to get to them before they break, because a lot of what's happening is that we're seeing them when they're either breaking or have broken. And so if we can take a little bit more proactive approach to it, that would be ideal.
Other questions, friends?
What's the, if you're not, what can you pay for it directly? I guess if you don't satisfy some of those other criteria, and then what's that cost?
Absolutely. Can you self-pay? So let me caveat that. So I do have clergy that don't meet whatever the requirement is. I will try and shake some trees to get a little bit of grant money to help out a little bit. I'm not always successful. But the cost is $29.50 for the tuition. And I also, when I can't shake and rattle and roll anything, I highly recommend, go to your church. In my case, Methodism, go to your district and see if they can't help you out just a little bit in some kind of partnership. And that's usually how it's done. It's a combination of self-pay and receiving assistance. Because I have a PCUSA person right now who I was able to shake a little bit out for them, and now they're applying for grants to try and get the other. But the bottom line tuition for us is $29.50, but that doesn't include travel, room and board, or meals.
Mhm.
And honestly, Scott, that tuition is really just to pay costs. So we're not a nonprofit, but we run on a very small profit margin because we're trying to keep the tuition as low as possible.
Sure.
We're not shaking up the bank, but yeah, we're really just so we can keep operating. And that's the number that's working for us right now.
Yeah, we don't want you to burn out either.
No. And I don't want any of my staff to burn out or anything like that.
Exactly. It kind of defeats the purpose, I think.
It really does. Well, I've just added two retired PCUSA clergy. One is a spiritual director, one is a pastoral counselor. And again, so it's these clergy that have experience in the world that aren't ready to retire fully. And so we're going to bring them on board right now as an as-needed basis. And I'm sure as time goes on, I'll just throw it out there, we'll need them more and more. But yeah, I want to have an abundance of staff so that I have a bench so that folks don't burn out on my end either.
All right, well, we're at the end of our time. Suzanne, thank you so much. It's great to make this
Oh.
connection.
My absolute pleasure. Larry, thank you for the invite and the conversation. And again, Larry, feel free to, if anybody's interested in my email or my phone, my number, give it out. I do not mind at all.
Oh, we will, young Skywalker. We will.
Obi-Wan.
That's right. All
All
right.
right. Thank you guys. Take
Thank you.
care.
The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Bye now.